when your ears refuse to hear. You turn your heart away from me each time when I draw near. Your eyes refuse to meet with mine, they glance away in fear.
Now, keep in mind that some of my guests have been approached by Homeland Security or FBI saying, why are you going on the Clay Douglas show?
My message to those guys, if they're listening this morning, is go get a cup of coffee, maybe you'll learn something.
We both took the same.
Hold on until as soon as this announcement's over. Hang on.
Domestic. I don't recall there being an expiration date on that.
You are live here. Hold on here.
This is the Free American, Clay Douglas. Catch the Free American weekdays at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern.
Every time I think about the damage that's been done, the anger wells inside me till I'm almost overcome. I want to tear the moon down to the sky and up the sun.
For the podcast and more details, visit www.freeamerican.com or catch the podcast by phone by calling 832-999-8631.
All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American. I'm your host. I'm Clay Douglas. And my guest, a little bit impatient here, I guess, Ronnie Blair. Hello, Ronnie. How are you?
Good morning, Claire. I'm not familiar with your process so well, but happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving to you. And, you know, I was just looking at some of the notes that you had, that you sent me. You said you're going to try to make a Thanksgiving theme to this idea of learning about energy healing or energy psychology. Learning how incredibly powerful we really are is a great gift that is already shifting our nation and planet to a new paradigm of pure genius. That is, out of the moronic Bush-Cheney-Clinton-Obama British-Zionist driven scrambled slave state. They can't win if we stop playing the game. I think those are remarkable words, and I'm really glad to have you on my show. And yes, ma'am.
And something is resonating here with those words, and today the general theme of gratitude for who and what and how powerful we are is reflected in the emergence of a new energy psychology or energy healing method called logosynthesis. And for people who are listening, and for you too, you can go to logosynthesis.net and take a look at some of the principles and processes that are used. And I've brought together various different kinds of methods myself, and have read William Lammer's book called Logosynthesis, and the subtitle of that is Healing with Words, a handbook for the helping professions, with a preface by Dr. Fred Gallo. And Fred Gallo, by the way, is one of the leaders of a new association, ASAP for short, standing for Association of Comprehensive Energy Psychologists. And I think it's kind of unfortunate that they have to ride on the tails of the old psychology movement, because it's really only uses some of the terminology. You know, you look at things like ego, id, and superego, some of Freud's terms, and that's kind of all we've got until we develop a different kind of a narrative or different lingo, and specifically different words that describe what we're looking at here with this this whole understanding of what energy is. And let me open up my...
Well, one of the things I've told my audience, I've asked them if they knew the definition of love. And the real definition of love is your level of energy. Vibrational energy. Love is your level of vibrational energy, and the higher you get on that scale, the better the things are for you. And that's demonstrable. I mean, you can take a little bit of water and put it on a sheet that says hate and one that says love, and it'll change. It'll the vibrations that they create are just incredible.
Sounds like you're talking about Yamamoto's beautiful work with how words can affect the one and their intentions, the vibrational intentions behind them, of the crystalline, natural substance we all know as water, H2O, and water is a universal solvent. We know it that way chemically, but actually it's like everything else. It's a form and an expression of universal energy. And we think about energy, when we plug it in, heat is energy, for instance, or light is a form of energy, or sound. And they all are, as you say, vibrational frequencies, and an expression of an electromagnetic field. And that electromagnetic field is what the subject of quantum physics covers. And I'm still trying to get some stuff going here on my computer. But at any rate, it's one of the most, quantum physics is now one of the most proven sciences, and we have many more advanced things going on with this whole business of healing and energy, and on the other extreme of just awareness and human consciousness, and the scale of human consciousness on which love occupies a certain logarithmic spot on David R. Hawkins' scale of human consciousness. It's actually called the map of the scale of human consciousness. We have things like directed energy weapons. So energy can be used for good or ill. And obviously we have the atomic bomb, which started out as a hydrogen bomb. And that whole era of the development of different kinds of weapons. And we have mind control weapons that Nick Begich has reported on for at least 10 years now. He had a video series in books covering this, the patents for mind control that are used with the heart function, and he was one of the first people to write about those in his book, Harp. Angels Don't Play This Harp, spelled H-A-R-P, for high aural, what is it now, auditory or whatever frequencies, as expressed in this, originally in this Alaskan array of antennas that they had up there. Now there are quite a few other harp facilities, and you know, and we first also heard about the Russian form of that as the woodpecker sound, and now we have it, interestingly, in this woodpecker kind of effect in our electrosmog, we call it, in all of the electrical facilities, including the wiring in our house. So Nick Begich talks about how we live in this electromagnetic field in our homes even. It's usually about 60 hertz, which is actually keeps us in a state of stress or imbalance, because it's really out of the healthy spectrum that human beings naturally live in, and that's from 0 to 30 hertz, and within that 30 hertz is 7.83 hertz measurable frequency of the planet Earth, and the certain kinds of energetic layers that we live in, and that's called the Schumann resonance. And indigenous people knew for thousands of years what this is all about with, you know, the meridians in the body. And Dr. Begich also brings up the fact that there was this a body discovered somewhere in Germany, I think, under the ice, or somewhere far north in Europe, let's say, and it had little tattoos of these meridian spots on it. And you know, we know, for instance, Qigong is an energy healing method. It's been around for 5,000 to 7,000 years, and you know, it's a tradition in the East. But that kind of thing didn't really make it to the West, where it seems like the Holy Roman Empire established this framework for what we call Western civilization. So we have this East-West divide, and some of that is being now completely transformed with this provocateuring with Russia and China, and with the intention, we believe, of regime change in Russia and China. I don't know so much China, but what we're seeing now is a complete escalation recently with this bombing from Turkey, backed by the NATO powers, to further provoke Putin in Russia to this pre-planned world war. You know, we know that the Freemasons and these people planned 3 world wars back, you know, when Mazzini and Albert Pike were conspiring criminally to create this process of overtaking the world, at least the external part of it. And,
three world wars.
So here we are.
3 world wars,
yeah.
They predicted. And the third being the Islam war against the Jewish and the Christians. And, you know, talking about energy, they want you to be afraid. I mean, every news broadcast on there, from the shootings in Paris to the shoot down of the Russian planes, the murder of the pilots as they were being parachuted down. This is designed to make you fear. All the news broadcasts are to keep you fearful, and which is the really the opposite energy created from love. It's totally opposite. It's a negative energy, and they used it on us for 100 years. Oh, the Germans, we got to go get those Germans. Oh, the Russians are coming. The Russians are coming. Be afraid. Be very, very afraid. That strips your power. When you allow fear to influence your judgment, your mind, it affects your body too, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and it's our senses are expressed and experienced from their environment right in our body, and it's a very exciting development in the discovery of a natural process, really, called epigenetics, and it's actually a departure from the old dogma of the DNA, of genetic determinism that Francis Crick and those guys all kind of conjured up. And it's not surprising that they hold very fast to these kinds of theories. They're science kind of distorted and actually used as a tool to manipulate people with. And another general dogma that we are suffering from these days is the one of past year's germ theory. And the West took these scientific developments, historically, especially those over the last couple of hundred years, and distorted them, used them, manipulated that information, and kept it in a kind of Newtonian linear and reductionist context, which we think of as kind of left brain dominant these days. So there's a variety of sciences, including neuroscience, quantum physics, epigenetics, and what should be rightfully called pleomorphism instead of past year's germ theory. But if we undo those limited and negative kind of interpretations of our reality, then we can basically overthrow this whole fear paradigm that we know especially developed since 9/11. It's the so-called war on terror, and that phrase in itself is a way of understanding how words are reversed, because it's really the war by terror.
Yes, it is. And I have told people for years, the war on terror is a war against anyone, anywhere in the world that opposes the one world government of the banksters, by the banksters, and for the banksters. And we've got a caller. Whoops, I guess, no, we don't have a caller right now. But I've got a caller that usually tries to get in. His name's David, and he requested next time we had William Blair, and I got to thinking about it. I said I assumed that William is your husband, but I mean, I just assumed that.
Yeah, I confess. We just had our 19th anniversary.
All right. Well, congratulations. Congratulations. I think that's wonderful. And William is just one of my favorite guests here. And I really, really appreciate his work, and Art George and Renee Smokey, all the auditors for Introspect. And I wasn't sure how closely your work was with Introspect, but if I can add that to our conversation on the chat room.
Well, we can if you like. Our lives are intertwined, and as all human relationships, marriage uses a certain kind of ritual of words to join two parties together, as they say, in a holy matrimony. And we have two different kinds of marriages these days. William just was writing recently about the kind of the third party of the state as a parent, as intervening on that holy union, holy matrimony union of two people, and by the state. And that's rooted in this doctrine called, if I pronounce it right, parens patriae. And I think I have that here as a link. And what it does is it was a legal development of, that you can look up, let me find it here real quickly, that, here it is.
That whole system, what we're talking about now, is under attack. This whole homosexual marriage, is a direct attack on our families and on us as individuals. They don't want man and woman living together, working together, and loving each other. So everything that you see on the television, on the movie screens, is designed to weaken that bond. And I personally have found it very difficult to maintain a relationship under the conditions today. I was married for 24 years, and that ended with the attack on me 10 years ago. But it was an outside source. It was an outside source that came in, the doctors, and that's something else I want to talk about. Yesterday's show, we talked about the doctors, about the medical scams, and part of that's a cancer. Oh, you got cancer, boy, you need chemotherapy. We got to give you chemotherapy. Now go smoke a joint. That'll take care of you, in my opinion.
Well, there's a natural sense instead of this unnatural world that these Tavistock people have created. There are over 300 cures for cancer, and the pleomorphic view of that would recognize any kind of microbiome as it's sort of the whole habitat, the human body, the skin, the mouth, and especially our guts are this habitat for all kinds of different bacteria, fungus, virus, the ways that we look at these different expressions of really one particular primary little unit of existence, which people like Antoine Bouchard called protits, or the little symbiont type of things that would actually morph, thus pleomorphism, into different forms. And if you look it up, it's not hard to understand that this is really a description of some of the most primal expressions of this great quantum field, what the indigenous people called the Great Spirit. And in quantum physics now, we call it the field, the great field, and it's an energetic field that actually is ongoing in time-space. And it's an energetic field, an electromagnetic field. And each form that is expressed out of that, including human beings, has a function. Plants grow and they reproduce. And so this whole idea of intervening on the natural processes, including the attraction men and women have for one another, by creating a dissonance between people in their relationships and all other kinds of activities on this planet, intends to break apart that bond. And it's really a bond ultimately with creation itself, with the Creator. And I believe that, as the Bible says, that we're made in the image of God, and that image is doesn't mean we are God. We have the capacity to create things the way creation does. And I love the old Hindu saying that God rests in stone, it breathes in plants, God dreams in animals, and awakens in man. And that's another way of looking at human consciousness as in a kind of a level of awareness or expression of that image of God. And so the Bible turns out as a kind of script that that these criminal conspirators use as the dark satanic forces. And we know that Jesus called what they were the Pharisees and the Sadducees in the Bible, and he called them the synagogue of Satan, the money changers. And none of this really went away in effect. It just kind of changed and hid its appearance as times passed and society developed more, and particularly with the advancement of different technologies. So technology, really, especially when you think about things like the bomb, the neutron and nuclear weapons, thermonuclear weapons, it's an energy weapon. because what did they do? They went down to the micro level of atoms, and they split atoms and different kinds of atoms like hydrogen, and we got this huge explosion that is so destructive. And some of the founders of the bomb saw themselves as the East Indian mythological god Shiva, who was the god of destruction, basically. And so they've really gone too far with this whole thing, and a lot of intelligent people out there on all sectors of society are trying to cool their jets so that they don't literally blow up the world now. And so my thing today is that we can be very grateful for the awareness that we have, but not many people are aware of it, Clay, of how powerful our minds are and how powerful the Word itself is. In the Bible, again, in Genesis and 1 John, I think it is, there's a lot of talk about how powerful we are. We have, first of all, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God's, and that God was the Word. And so we're looking at an expression of reality that manifests in human language in this sense. And we talked about that a little bit the last time I was on your show, where, the words are basically abstractions of a reality, but they are how we communicate. And so they're symbols. And so anyway, we go back to this whole map of the scale of human consciousness and the idea of love versus these lower levels of awareness and frequencies. And we start out very low, on a scale from 1 to 100, a logarithmic scale, with emotions. And emotions are like, they're thoughts, and beliefs are emotions with thoughts attached to them that you can see as reflections of scale of human consciousness. And down along 20 or so, it represents the level of shame. And I'll read that from Dr. David R. Hawkins' scale. It says, the level of shame is perilously proximate to death, which may be chosen out of shame as conscious suicide, or more subtly elected by failure to take steps to prolong life. In other words, it's a level of apathy. You just don't care anymore, and, so what if you live or die? So it says, in shame, we hang our heads and shirk away, wishing that we were invisible. It's destructive to emotional and psychological health and makes us prone to physical illness. And you can actually use energy testing, sometimes called muscle testing, to ask, or actually you're posing a present tense statement as a question and get yes, no, true, false, and like, dislike answers from the, or, basically resonant answers to those questions or statements. So if you say, on that scale, you can say on David R. Hawkins' scale of 0 to 100, the level of consciousness of Dick Cheney is, and it's not in future or past tense, which don't exist. So this is a present tense posing of a statement. And so Dick Cheney, it turns out, resonates on this map at only about 30 or something. And let me read that. It's represented by guilt. And think of how the Holy Roman Empire, represented by the Vatican today and the Catholic Church, and to a great extent, not the whole church of people, but the leadership in the Holy See, for instance, gives off this idea that we are not good enough, we're not worthy, we're not doing what we should do, according to whomever, this group of people in the Holy See and all of this. And so therefore we must obey the vicar of Christ and, these oligarchs that basically inherited the old Holy Roman Empire, which was the Roman Empire. And it was under the Roman Empire that Jesus was martyred.
Crucified, because he was telling us, Jesus told us, you can do what I do and more. And I believe that the Council of Nicaea, they actually promoted him to God because they didn't want people like me aspiring to be the kind of man he was, a man that was in touch with God, with divinity, with the Great Spirit. And that's why Jesus could heal people, and not meant as bragging or anything like that, but I've been able to do the same thing. If somebody's got a headache, I can take it away in 5 minutes, just using the energy in my body. Now, I've got a little different look on things than anybody else, I guess. I've said to myself, if you're God, if you're omniscient and omnipotent, you know everything, you can do anything, what are you? Well, you're God. You got to be God. And I said, well, I think you're bored to tears. I think if you can do all that and you're at that level, vibrational level, that you know everything, you can do anything. What do you do? You create us, so you've got your romance, you got your intrigue, you got your entertainment. As Shakespeare said, the whole world's a stage, and God's our audience, which means everybody out there. We're not talking about anything unique here. Anybody can talk to God. You don't have to go to a priest. You don't have to go to a rabbi. You don't have to be, confess. You've got direct access to God, in my opinion.
Well, what did Jesus say? He said, I and the Father are one. And that's when the Pharisees got pretty upset, because as the mediators of the truth, the arbiters of the truth, being the lawgivers and so forth, and the scribes, of course, wrote down the words. And in these classic entertainment movies like Ben-Hur and the Ten Commandments, we heard the Egyptian pharaoh say, as it is written, so it shall be. And so here we go back to the word and how they represent these states of consciousness or levels of awareness. And, to go up on David R. Hawkins' scale, which you can look up online, to guilt and the level where Dick Cheney is, it says, guilt manifests itself in a variety of expressions such as remorse, self-recrimination, masochism, and think of sadomasochism there when you're thinking of Dick Cheney, and the whole gamut of symptoms of victimhood. Unconscious guilt results in psychosomatic disease, that means, in your cells of your body, accident proneness, and suicidal behavior. Guilt provokes rage, and killing frequently is an expression. So there you go. That's kind of an interesting way of looking at Dick Cheney. But also anyone who feels guilt. And if you're on the scale, by the way, from shame, guilt, apathy, grief, fear, desire, anger, pride, and courage, we go from a lower level of energy to a higher level of energy. So this is why people who are in a state of apathy or shame are stuck, energetically speaking, in this lower level, and they can hardly move. It's so close to death. But as you go up, even to grief or fear, fear calibrates literally with this energy testing methods at 100 on the scale. And I'll jump there real quickly just to give some context. And for what we're talking about here, and I'll read that. It says, from the viewpoint of this level, the world looks hazardous, full of traps and threats. Once fear is one's focus, the endless, worrisome events of the world feed it. Fear becomes obsessive and may take any form. Fear limits growth, and that's a central principle, of the personality and leads to inhibition. Because it takes energy to rise above fear, the oppressed are unable to reach a higher level unaided. So this is really key, and I'm telling you, there were 20 years of energy testing research that went into establishing this context for understanding emotions and human consciousness. And so right away you have this understanding of why they use fear to keep us suppressed, or oppressed is the proper word. But we have been trained, like the elephant on the chain in the zoo, after being chained for so long, who doesn't believe he has any power to escape from that state of imprisonment and enslavement. So fear actually ends up being a social norm in which we enforce our own enslavement. So a belief that you have to be afraid and always afraid, which has been the whole theme of the 911 New World Order system, keeps us trapped. And so how do we heal that? How do we get rid of that? Well, logosynthesis is one of the, I think, as yet unused and undiscovered forms of energy healing, and that Fred Gallo wrote a preface to this is interesting because he's one of the founders of this ASET group, the Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology. So this is a body, mind, and spirit method of healing. So I wanted to go to look at what logosynthesis is and how we can use this to heal ourselves. We don't even really need other people, but I think, you know, when we're in a state of pretty low, high fear, that it really does require a little help, at least a safe place where we can go and not be harassed, you know, to release these trapped emotions, because they actually do kind of, they're represented in a time-space in the past, or worry about the future. So we're looking at quantum physics time-space continuum, and so what Dr. Lammers calls these energy constructs or introjects that sort of freeze us in time-space at the time when these traumatic events and fearful experiences occurred. And so that he calls them energetic constructs or frozen worlds. And you might even see that as sort of a dimensional understanding of the nature of these energy blocks. And once we're unblocked, we have a natural inherent knowingness that we originally started talking about. We have a sense of you know, this capacity of energy flow. If you go to the logosynthesis website, it's logosynthesis.net, there are different ways of, you can see how this works, but it says, right, there's a quote from a psychotherapist that says, I can truly say that my state of mind is so much more relaxed. I mean, it's moving around here just a second. And so logosynthesis is important. I hate this when they do that, when they screen it, because you can't stop it very well. Logosynthesis has enabled people to relate to themselves and to others in much healthier ways. Let's just put it this way. But it says, imagine. Use your creative imagination. Imagine saying a simple sentence. Maybe you'd like to read it. And feeling how fear, anger, or shame are being pulled out of your system. Imagine how the causes of pain and sorrow stop hurting you. And this literally stops suffering. And so it says, logosynthesis is an amazing new system of healing and guided change. It uses the manifesting power. I don't know why my page here is just, it's scrolling or something, but I'll continue. It says it uses the manifest power of change and words and phrases to resolve negative beliefs, to let go of fear and trauma, and to lift the burden of. Are you on that page? This thing just keeps on.
No, I need you to send me on Skype a link to that because I couldn't find it earlier.
That's interesting. Okay. Well, let me get it here. Just be patient, and we'll do this. But what we're looking at is the same thing that Dr. Emoto looked at when you call somebody stupid and ugly and worthless. You basically are sending curses. And I like to reference Kathy O'Brien and Mark Phillips' very intimate understanding, obviously, of how we're controlled by fear or shock and trauma, and the way that the MK Ultra CIA system worked. And it's been used against all of us on a social level. So let me get my stuff up here. I should have been a little bit better prepared. It's spelled LOGOSYNTHESIS, logosynthesis.net. And my computer's kind of slow here. So,
that's all right. Just drop that in your Skype there, and I'll be able to pick it up.
I don't have my Skype open too, and I probably need to upgrade it for my system, so that would take a little while.
Or send me an email. Send me an email on it. That'll be all right.
Right. What I want to recommend for listeners, and I'm waiting for this book myself, is Lammer's book called Self-Coaching with Logosynthesis: How the Power of Words Can Change Your Life. And his description is Self-Coaching with Logosynthesis reveals how to apply the revolutionary logosynthesis model and create a new reality through the power of words. The book is easy to read and includes powerful exercises for solving everyday problems. It also features fascinating real-life illustrations of logosynthesis in action. You learn how to move beyond disturbing memories, fear-inducing fantasies, and limiting beliefs, and eventually take control of your life and stop suffering. Now that's quite the promise there, and I've already worked with it a little bit with myself, and it's quite remarkable. So taking a look at the kinds of things that are said is pretty amazing. Going to the at the home page, there's a link to resources, books under books and more, and you go to resources from there, and you'll see case studies, for instance, where people, they give their testimonials about what's going on. But under logosynthesis resources, there's a basic paper and a quick reference paper that you can open up, and it gives you the words that you can actually repeat and the principles that describe it. It says, we are more than a body and mind, we're essence, a higher self. The 4 principles are: suffering is primarily the result of unawareness of our essence and of our creative tasks. Number 2 is dissociated parts and introjects prevent our being fully aware and living through our core self. The 3rd principle is dissociated parts and introjects are rigid energy structures existing in 3-dimensional space rather than abstract cognitive parts of the mind. Number 4 is the power of the word itself dissolves these frozen structures and allows the energy they were holding captive to be reclaimed by our real self. And the procedure is you create a supporting environment. You need a place of safety, and I have different techniques that I can share of how to do that. If you live in a home where there's a lot of drinking and drugging and verbal abuse or physical abuse, that's not conducive, obviously, to letting go of fear. So you create a safe and supportive environment for learning and change, and then identify a concrete symptom to work on as an answer to meta question A, which is, how does your client, or yourself in this case, how do you suffer? And it says, find the level of distress, which comes from emotional freedom technique, which is a subjective level on a scale from 0 to 10. You know, say, you have an experience of being harmed in the way that Kathy O'Brien was, or just you were verbally abused your life as a child, and you have this image of your father or mother yelling at you and telling you that you're a loser and you'll never amount to anything, and you feel guilty and unworthy, which itself actually creates depression. So
negative programming. Negative programming.
Pardon me?
I said negative programming. And that's a mistake that all of us make. Couples, parents, even children. You know, if you're being programmed negatively, you lose the ability to think positively and make a change.
It's habitual. So, what we do is we repeat these statements, and you're basically using the word as a command to restore balance in your own system. And so, if you go to this resources page and click on this part about the principles and it's sort of a Cliff Notes or cheat sheet or something that you can use. But let me just go through this and let people discover the rest of it when they purchase this book called Self-Coaching Through Local Synthesis. The first statement is, I retrieve all my energy bound up in the whatever it is and take it back to the right place in myself. Now, that energy can be bound up in the image of someone else, their energy. Just thinking about Dick Cheney is disgusting for me. So I can say, I retrieve all of my energy bound up in Dick Cheney and take it back to the right place in myself. Okay? Because when they did these TV repetitions of the trauma of the image of 911 coming down, that's what I associate with Dick Cheney. And it's kind of orchestrating this from their little situation room somewhere. And so the second sentence is, I remove all non-me energy related to Dick Cheney from all of my cells, all of my body, and my personal space, and send it back to its origin. So another little statement I like to use is, go back from whence you came, never to return to me or this reality. And you're basically commanding energy. The third statement has to do with the triggers that we are programmed to react to. And Kathy O'Brien was well versed in the kinds of things that, in associations that are imprinted on the neural pathways of our brain with those kinds of trauma-based mind control that she experienced. Well, it was no different for us. It just took a form of social trauma, and that includes things like assassinations and serial false flag operations, the war itself, the hot wars. And the Cold War was really a big psychological war as well, to create a fear around who Russia was, for one, because they had this plan to unify the West with the East. So the third statement has to do with those triggers. It says, I retrieve all of my energy bound up in all of my reactions to Dick Cheney in this case and take it back to the right place in myself. And I recommend taking some deep breaths and actually releasing that. And then what happens is, you know, a little bit more of our real self, so to speak, our whole self, returns because we've removed this energetic block from our consciousness and our space, our time-space in which we live. So there's a process that follows that procedure where the person takes time. They're experiencing this release, and it's not necessary just to mix logosynthesis with other techniques. And once you decide to apply the system for an issue, stay with it and give it time to work. So you go through this other process, and his process is really, really a combination of some of these other techniques that he didn't like too much. Like an emotional freedom technique requires you tap on your body. It's kind of a way of waking yourself up on these by tapping these meridian points, and they're very, very valuable. But and it works very well for a lot of people. But I'm pretty well persuaded that that logosynthesis is very much, you know, kind of the representation of the wisdom, and that this is going to be the let's see here. I'm going to forward this to you. It's what is energy psychology, a definition. Anyway, we have an opportunity now to learn this practice, and it's in the Buddhist tradition. Thich Nhat Hanh said, "Peace is all around us. It's not a matter of faith; it's a matter of practice." So just as we're habitually brain entrained through this abuse of neuroscience, basically, we can undo that with this system. And if I can get my act together here with some of the resources that I put together, I'm having a little bit of trouble seeing. So anyway, this could be our best tool to actually undo all of this programming, and we can do it ourselves. We don't necessarily have to have someone to help us, but boy, wouldn't it be great to have people doing that and creating whole new kind of subcultures of wellness instead of having a sickness society. So it's really exciting to see. You know, this actually relates to the 7 chakras in the body and opening the heart chakra, which is basically the center of our energetic force. If you ever look at diagrams online of how this kind of stuff looks, we now have instruments that you can measure the energetic field around the body. And you know, there's a lot of people who kind of relegate this sort of thing to what they call the New Age, but it's actually quantum physics, and the imitation of it was this whole social engineering process that we know we've undergone. And to understand that that's really actually going on, I want to reference an article by the Executive Intelligence Review. Just a second here. It's called "Making the the Congress for Cultural Freedom, Making the Post-War World Safe for Fascist Kulturkampf," which is, culture, a culture war. And it's by Stephen P. Meyer and Jeff Steinberg. And this is about how Theo Adorno and Max Horkheimer were 2 of the earliest leaders of the Frankfurt School and were co-directors of the Authoritarian Personality Project of the late 1940s that willfully engineered the baby boomer drug rock sex counterculture 2 decades later. We were just kids then, and now we have the millennials that are being subjected to this university politically correct programming and indoctrination, and it's literally making them hysterical and very depressed. The level of suicide goes up because they don't see a future for themselves. So this is how people can actually die by believing a bunch of crazy stuff, lies that the father of lies, Satan, let's say, creates. And by the way, the definition in the Bible dictionary of Satan is called adversary, the great adversary, the great deceiver. So this is why we call, the Pharisees and the scribes the synagogue of Satan. And that's not to say that all Jewish people are are captivated by that, but that's a culture. These are cultural beliefs. So we have really fantastic new developments that have emerged out of the field of psychotherapy and psychiatry that were taken over by the Dr. Green types after World War II. And they implemented this social engineering thing, the Congress for Cultural Freedom, that basically turned, what was before sort of an appreciation of classical and normal popular music and jazz and things like that, into what's developed into some of the hard rock is totally cacophonous. It's not exactly a harmonic kind of healing sound, and a lot of people kind of adapted to that. And and it's okay as far as I'm concerned. People have their own choices, but there are consequences, and we need to look into the whole thing of free love and promiscuous behavior and how that was all used to break up the family and destroy human relationships so that we could be basically homogenized into little robotic obedient slaves for this very deranged and low-level consciousness creation that the people over at Tavistock and the World Institute for International Affairs and the CFR and the Southern Poverty Law Center and the ADL and all of these other kind of organizations were used as tools to disseminate this garbage that we now see as, the lefty law, politically correct movement. And I don't know if you've ever heard about Daryl Hamamoto, but he interviewed Alex Jones, quite a lot actually recently, and he's right on point, having kind of withstood his ground at the University of California at Davis. And he's in an ethnic Asian studies department head. And there are these particular people that are attacking him right from within a school, whose names have been named, and one of which is a gal who's got patents on these mind control antennas. It's just so funny to me, because here they are, and they thought they would soothe the emotions of the students, and be able to actually direct people's moods and emotions and thoughts through this high technology that Nick Begich covers so well. And his website is called, appropriately, earthpulse.com. And at some point I'd like to get into some of this incredible technology, healing technology, because Dr. Begich was fully aware that this kind of knowledge could be used for good or ill, and that it does have this tremendous healing potential. And, there are a lot of really simple, affordable items that we can purchase and use. One that I actually signed on to was one called Sleep on Command or Demand, and it replicates the very healing. It's basically sleep is doing Qigong. You're removing energy, and you're resting your body. So, not that we want to just upset our natural circadian rhythms and sleep processes, but this is a healing thing that has antioxidant power and everything else. And so does the Schumann resonance of the planet, which is, within this 0 to 30 hertz range that's healthy for human beings. So the Schumann resonance is 7.83, and a lot of this pulsed electromagnetic field therapy is emerging. It's just starting to explode if you start to look at it on the internet. There's all kinds of quick advancements in the quality and effectiveness of these kinds of things. There's one called whatever it is, PEMF 8000, and it's one of the links that I was going to send you if I can find my original document with the links I was going to send you here. Anyway, it's we can go back now to look at what is energy psychology, and that I just sent to you, and it says feeling stuck even after traditional therapy, and this is from the Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology, and I'm trying to make it bigger here. It says energy psychology is a family of integrative approaches to psychotherapy, coaching, and healthcare treatment rooted in mind-body healing traditions that are up to 5,000 years old. EP, or energy psychology methods, blends the bioenergetic insights of these traditions with the best of contemporary psychology practice and have been refined through 35 years of modern clinical experience with millions of clients throughout the world. So it's a gentle and swift release of traumatic events that are frozen in time in the body-mind system. These events can negatively influence how a person sees the world, experiences and regulates emotion, and relates to other people. So this, the healing professions are organizing and professionalizing some of these techniques. And, of course, I'm certified as a health coach and as a level 2 Psyche practitioner. Psyche is a really fantastic method that involves balancing the left and right brain hemispheres, which you can do simply by crossing your legs and maybe your arms in front of your body, where you're around your heart, for instance. One of the most beautiful and fun, exhilarating ways to understand this is a bit of a long YouTube video by Donna Eden called Introduction to Energy Healing, energy medicine actually, and it's so much fun because she's just bubbling over with positive energy, and she demonstrates in this particular video what muscle testing, or she calls it energy testing, because you're not really testing the strength of muscles, you're testing the subtle energy in the body, and what blocks it. And you have a weak response, no matter how strong you are muscularly, to these images of violence and sex and this kind of thing. And most drugs actually block energy in the body, and which is what pharmaceutical drugs do. And so this is, as far as I'm concerned, part of this criminal conspiracy to basically shut us down and kill us energetically through food and all of the other things that block chi, or energy in the body. And emotions is the first thing. Nutrition is the second. You can put toxins in the nutrition, so-called nutrition, in the foods as one of those things. And then it moves on to the environment that we're in, injuries, the changing of the seasons, and then the sixth factor that blocks chi in Spring Forest Qigong, which I practice, is bad medicine or pharmaceuticals, which Master Chun Yuan notes kills over 100,000 people a year. So we're looking at real serious mass genocide based on energetic directed weapons. And this is psychological warfare. And I think we're also helped quite a bit by the Eastern wisdom of Sun Tzu, who wrote The Art of War. And so this is one of my references for some of the things that we can use, these principles or strategies, to undo this kind of psychological warfare. One of those principles has to do with not going to war in the first place.
You mentioned something about music earlier, and it just kind of popped into my mind. I tolerate and like some rock and roll. I prefer country. It's more soothing to me. And I absolutely hate the whole rap thing and with the heavy bass drum. It rankles my spirit. I think if you're talking about satanic music, the rap is it, and it's affecting the blacks and the Hispanics that are invading this country.
Absolutely. It was another war, basically, to provoke, create chaos in the energetic fields of the African-American culture. And they took what was originally a very political, street kind of, kind of a coping mechanism, as a creative way of expressing their frustrations and getting those out, and which was, you could even see it as a healing thing. And they commercialized it, and they sexualized it too. They used to just wear baggy pants, and they took the gals that would do it and promoted them made them look more sexy and seductive. And sex and violence both are very primitive urges, that fit in there with the fight, flight, freeze mechanisms of the autonomic nervous system. So the science about this is not that hard to understand if anybody wants to research it. And a lot of this is covered in Dr. Levine's book about trauma, called In an Unspoken Voice. And he has gone deeply into what actually happens in the body, in the mind and body, which are not separate. And he so people who want to go deeper into that can read, I suggest, his work. He has another one called Trauma-Proofing Your Kids, which is a good way to kind of stop this generational, destructive force of bad parenting techniques, and learning how to shake off the things that disturb us, or, if we get afraid, even as little children, imagine that there's a boogeyman in the closet, then you can see how this works with them, and how, soothing comfort and support, basically love emotions of empathy and compassion, undo all of this other stuff. And Master Cheney-Lin, the man who developed the Spring Force Qigong system, wrote a book called I'm a Healer, I Was Born a Healer, You're a Healer Too. And that was his biography. He grew up in the Mao Zedong era of the so-called Cultural Revolution, which was not indifferent from the Congress for Cultural Freedom operation that was being applied to the West. And Mao Zedong was not some creation of the Chinese culture. He went to Yale, and I have there are certain connections with the Bush family that reveal what a horrible, destructive genocide operation that was, using mind control, and how he imposed the same kinds of Stasi or Bolshevik-type revolution methods upon the American people. So this is, energetic healing is one of our biggest tools. You can call it a weapon, a knowledge-based weapon against ignorance. And if we're ignorant, we're going to be ruled by knowledge. And the occult, it just means hidden knowledge. And they use this hidden knowledge to war against reality itself. And ultimately, it's very destructive to them, too, but they don't see it. They're blind at those lower levels of consciousness, and which manifests in so much self-destruction, too. I mean, I can't even imagine Dick Cheney walking around with that fake heart, that mechanical heart he's got. And ultimately, his soul has been completely destroyed. And, I think that they just experiment on people to see if they can create this post-human or transhumanist culture that they're trying to, establish for all of humanity. So this is very, very serious and important stuff. And so shifting our focus, Clay, from this horrid, problem, reaction, solution cyclic process of rehashing old traumas, basically, to what really heals us is the way out of this. It's the answer to the culture war, which basically they destroy themselves in this process. And we know all the pivots of control and the organized forms, institutional controls through bureaucracies, and how banking, has driven all of these other methods of basically getting people to sell their souls to the devil. They don't gain anything. They lose their soul, just like Jesus said. What if a man gains the whole world but loses his own soul? So this is the real core reflection of the reality of the wisdom that we hear in the Bible. And I just wish more Christians, and even Jews for that matter, would wake up to it, because they're acting in false humility to say, no, that's not going to help us to try and heal people. And they pray, but they don't get their body involved, and so it's far less effective. And people just die from cancer, and they go, oh, the doctor couldn't save me. And it's this incredible, childish kind of state of lack of awareness, of ignorance. And it's just got to stop. We have, we all have the capacity to be geniuses. And you read, your opening statement about that. And we all have this inherent knowingness. We're already whole and complete. But when we have these difficult traumatic experiences, it breaks us off. It literally peels off a new energetic construct, and we lose part of our whole sense of self. And we are truly essence. And this is something truly to celebrate. I mean, I get really excited about it. And anybody can learn to do this. You can even order Donna Eden's Energy Healing Kit. It's not even very expensive. You can buy it on Amazon. And she has little videos and, guidebooks, and it's a practice. So,
well, you mentioned the churches, and you even mentioned Jews in there. I think that is the synagogue of Satan. You may be able to find one or two that haven't been affected by that, but I don't think you'll find very many. But the problem is that the Christians are following the same path. They're being led by the Pharisees down the wrong path, I think. Now, don't want to throw all of those in there, because I've got my friend Dr. Jake Wade. He calls the Bible his answer book. He calls the Bible his answer book. And he just sent me his latest article about Let History Teach Us. Talks about Deuteronomy 32, Ephesians 5. Remember the days of old, considering that this song was meant to be a witness against a rebellious Israel. Moses reminded Israel of all God's goodness to them. This was to bring a greater conviction of sin and remind them of God's love and grace that they could return to. What has happened to our country? Why does no society study history for learning from it? It's not just dates and data. Did not God say in Deuteronomy 32, where is their faith? I will provoke them to jealousy by a foolish nation. Match Romans 10. What's changed today? Is it not the same situation, the same history lesson from God, similar plagues, and His Father's desire that we get it? Ephesians 5:16-20. He says this was written in a desert, yet with the truth of their solution staring them in the face, they complained about the food, the desert conditions, and the lack of entertainment. and he said, wait a minute, what was so all fired bad? Manna, perfect food, Water, perfect and always available. No illness, physical anyway. Clothing did not wear out. No slavery, except their own self-imposed slavery. Guidance from the Creator Father. Fire column night, smoke day, rule, book to live by, the commandments. And just what he said there, I saw almost those very words coming from the mouths of the Muslims as they were invading Germany. We're bored. There's nothing to do. We're bored. We're living in a mansion. They gave us a mansion to live in, but we're bored. We're not happy here.
Well, we're in a prison. We're an energetic prison, and it's an open-air prison like the reservations are. And we've been cut off from that divine wisdom, and that the word logos defines. I wanted to kind of go back full circle here a little bit.
Go right ahead, dear. By the way,
the definition.
Jake also said, fear kills faith, which leads to worry, which turns to stress and damages our mind and body. Stress kills health. Go ahead.
Absolutely. It kills life. So what did Jesus say about worry? He said it comes to nothing. Don't go there. It's so simple, we don't see it. And, you know, like you said, there's a Ralph Waldo Emerson, I think, said, the truth is simple. If it were complicated, everyone would understand it. So this is sort of a function of the mind that looks for trouble. And so we've been exploited, that tendency of curiosity and learning itself, you know, through observation, to always be wanting to know what the next problem is that we can solve. And it's really a good thing, but it's been put to the evil purposes. So it really pays off to define these words, and as powerful kind of, you know, electromagnetic fields of energy as either healing or destructive. So the Webster's, good old Webster's, defines logos as, you know, the word is the divine wisdom manifesting the creation, government, and redemption of the world, and often identified with the second person of the Trinity, meaning the Son, Jesus, Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. So, and then the second definition says, reason that in ancient Greek philosophy is a controlling principle in the universe. Isn't that interesting? So we've got some different definitions, and we know that the definitions of words have been really messed up. And the whole principle of logos is combined with ethos and pathos, and that's worth looking into, because the three, there's the ethos, pathos, and logos, are how it's kind of like a neuro-linguistic programming process that represents, you know, a certain aspect of human consciousness. And so, anyway, we're learning about ourselves, and we've been blocked off from this kind of knowledge of human consciousness that puts us back into the position of individual sovereignty instead of being treated like children from the parents' patriae, the state as parent.
Jesus said, I will not give you much until you can handle little. And he also warned us that worry cannot add one thing to our lives, Matthew 6:4. He said, I actually think it does add one thing, stress.
So that's that inner conflict of the dialectic, you know, of the dualistic us versus them kind of war, and that underlying principle was used as a weapon against us. So a house divided cannot stand. Divided against himself, and it doesn't matter what context you use, a nation or an individual, if you're in a state of inner conflict, it's like having your foot on the gas and the brake at the same time, and that's stress. And it manifests as tension and a blocked energy in the mind and in the body. And we can't literally think when we're in a state of fear, because your whole autonomic nervous system has gone over to resonating with the defense mechanism, all the body's energy goes back to the stomach. Digestion stops. You see something fearful and you freeze. You freeze in space, which is another survival mechanism that women use a lot. They're stuck. It's like the deer in the headlights thing. But also, men are the warriors. They are more likely to fight. Women are more likely to run, but, there are certain conditions under which it's smart to just get the heck out of there, wherever it is. An abusive home where you're being raped by your father, in Kathy O'Brien's case, and she had no way to escape. And she had no knowledge of how to escape. She didn't know anything about the way the world works when she met Mark Phillips. And it's really worth looking at her Illuminati, mind control presentation, because one of the things she says, this goes back to logosynthesis methods, is that until we get this knowledge, we're forever going to be reacting to the triggers and, the buttons that they push that re-traumatize us all the time. All they have to do is show another picture of the two towers going down and people jumping out the windows, and to go deeper and deeper into this spell, basically a trance, created by those images. And, come on, let's focus on some solutions here instead of complaining all the time and actually blaming the American people who have been under this, the effects of HAARP technology, for instance, which was actually used experimentally on the town of Eugene, about 50 miles from where we live. And, it's no wonder it's like the heart of the Environmental Law Conference, which is controlled by Nathan Rothschild, because we've got these people saying the most ridiculously insane things and using so-called environmental law to, promote this whole idea of global warming. And they taught it to me in geography coursework. And it was insane. And some of the smarter students would look at each other and go, what the heck are they talking about? And they didn't have any really good evidence. It was just indoctrination. And a lot of people just were there to jump through the hoops, like I was, thinking falsely that we were going to have a better career or life and get paid a decent wage instead of being, bottom feeders or whatever you want to call it in their hierarchy. So now they're culling the herd, the so-called cattle who, operate under this groupthink mentality of conformity. And, and that's what William does. He covers the whole collaborative governance, Delphi technique methods of controlling groups of people. So knowledge of these energetic natural forces, which we actually are, expressions of God, is our way out of this, Clay. And I think it's just the most exciting thing. And you look at people like Donna Eden just bubbling over with just wonderful humor and, I don't know, she's just really caring and compassionate. And that's in itself is an energetic force that heals. So, yes, it's love that heals. And the Bible again says, I think in First John, it says God is love, and if you love, you're in God, and God is in you. And Jesus said the kingdom of God is within. It's not in the world. And the world was this place where, we have these denser forms of energy called the flesh, the matter, that, remember we read last time from Einstein.
Thinking about it, they have really, through television, through the media, they have really tampered with the term love. They want to make it into sex rather than an inner feeling, an inner force that's very powerful.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's a level of consciousness again. It's a level of knowledge. And it's a level where you're not blocked by a lot of fear and, all of these other levels of emotion. So, yeah, it's pretty obvious once you get up to speed on this. And there are lots of methods that have been around since the 70s. One of my favorites is called the Sedona method. And you can buy the CDs at a really great resource for this kind of energetic healing stuff called learningstrategies.com. And I bought really fantastic products from them, including the Sedona method. And it's basically another energy block releasing method. And sometimes we can go into that a little deeper and look at this aversion and attraction force. And it's in the work of David R. Hawkins, which I also want to recommend. His book is called, his first one in a series is called Power versus Force. And what is called political power is really force. Was it Samuel Adams who said, or one of the different founders said, government isn't some benign thing, it's force. It's military force, the commander-in-chief, that we have right now, if you can call him that. He basically gives orders for these drone killings, and it's an assassination system that, we bought into. We do nothing because we're in this entrained state of apathy, largely. But now it's come out with Snowden and his pal, the drone papers. And it's just exciting to see, oh my gosh, everybody needs to go look at this and use it as fuel for, discrediting and putting down Obama, because the more we reduce them to complete ridicule, they will have, he's already politically kind of dead, except that Congress continues to buy into this insanity. It's called The Intercept. TheIntercept.com, The Assassination Complex, Secret Military Documents Expose the Inner Workings of Obama's Drone Wars. And obviously, it's not just against, so-called terrorists in Afghanistan. It's a thing that's being used against us. And there are thousands of these things loosened all over the place, and it's another abuse of power or abuse of force and abuse against the American people and against reality, because it's a fearful weapon. We've got other forms of weapons used for crowd control. These what do they call them? Tasers and all of these kinds of microwave weapons and things. And so it's just one form or another, form of literal social psychosis being imposed upon us. And it's about to collapse. And I think we really will benefit by kind of stocking up on decent food and being able to weather this transition from the death of the dollar, for one, and maintain our sense of equilibrium throughout, this whole thing. What it's going to be like, I imagine. Now, this is just a contingency plan, but if all the power were to go off on our house, Nick Baggage points out things would be really quiet. It would actually be an advantage because you wouldn't have that 60 hertz energy in the grid in your house, an electrical system, creating that low-level stress. So what did we all do before the electric light and all of these kinds of things, which is a fairly recent development? We interfaced with nature. If you live in an area where there's wood, you can build a fire. In fact, we like to get out of the house and build a fire when it's not raining in our front yard, or it's big old growth trees and moss and all kinds of neat stuff here. And we sit there and just look at the fire, and it's warm, and it's
that's
a wonderful experience.
I said one of the things that I really miss. I've gone to some militia meetings and parties, and we sat around the fire, and it was so relaxing, so invigorating, so healing to sit around a fire just talking. No, not necessarily no music, no, you know, especially no television. You know, it was just it was a real healing experience. And I just opened up something. I did a search on energy healing, and one of the things that popped up here was getting rid of pain. They said an ever-present reality for many people is the physical pain in their lives. It can be due to arthritis, cancer, digestive problems, or food, the list goes on. But the first thing the energy worker needs is to realize that all pain is the result of stuck energy. The body is sending a message that something is not right and needs to have attention paid to that area. And then they talk about what is the best way to move stuck energy. The lady that's writing this is, the day I began seeing inside the body, I had no training in healing, but I knew I could not let my visitor leave until I at least tried to change the darkness I saw in his stomach area. Not knowing any modality, I began to move my hand back and forth over the dark area. I saw golden laser-like beams flowing out of my fingers into the stomach almost immediately. Light transformed the area, and it looked better than the surrounding area. When the area was filled with light, I knew the treatment was complete. In the middle of writing this, a dear client phoned to say her right knee was so painful she could not walk normally. Understand that it is easy to look in the body at a distance of many miles when it is as it is when the person is in front of you. As I focused on her leg, I noticed the lower end of the femur, the long bone from the hip to the knee, was out of alignment and pushing the patella of the kneecap forward. There was also a buildup of fluid behind the knee. I intuitively knew there was pain on the outside area of the knee as well. I used my hands to manipulate her etheric knee and pelvis just as I would if we had been together. Then I asked for her to stand on the leg and move it to see if there was any residual pain. It was greatly reduced, and she was pleased. I think this is pretty amazing because we can heal at a distance. We can travel in this ether, what she calls the ether here. And that just shows that we've really got unlimited power here. And they don't want you they don't want you to know about that. They don't want you to be able to heal yourself. They don't want you to be able to heal others. And you mentioned Kathy O'Brien. One of the things that Kathy told me while we were, she and Mark and I were sitting down smoking a joint together, was that it was the marijuana that helped set her free from this mind control. She said, I was allowed to do cocaine, I was allowed to do heroin. Her handler was your buddy there, Dick Cheney, and she said I was allowed to do anything I want, but they wouldn't let me smoke marijuana. They didn't want me to smoke marijuana. And I got to tell you, you know, I was real excited in Arizona when I was living in Arizona, and they passed the medical marijuana law. I said, wow, this is pretty cool, man. Maybe for the first time in my life I won't be a criminal anymore. But I couldn't, I didn't qualify for medical marijuana. They wouldn't let me have medical marijuana because I didn't have a doctor. I didn't go to a doctor. I should, well, the reason I don't go to a doctor is that I don't need one because I've been smoking this stuff for 45 years. I don't have a pain in my body. I still got my appendix. I still got my tonsils, and I don't have a trace of cancer.
Well, that goes back to the Antoine Duchamp versus the Pasteur. I have a book called The Curse of Louis Pasteur by Dr. Appleton, I think it is, and she does a great job of talking about inflammation, which is what causes pain in the body. It's the body creates a fever around an area that needs to be healed. It changes the temperature of your body system, and the food that we eat can create inflammation quite a lot, especially high carbohydrates, because your body, it's just not your natural form of energy source. The natural form of energy source is fat, saturated fat from animals. Coconut oil is great, butter is good. I use a lot of butter when I make eggs and things like that. But once we understand what the body's kind of genetic blueprint is and what this normal hertz, 0 to 30 hertz is range of human perception and health is, we can now take these instruments that we've developed with our creative forces to detect these frequencies beyond our normal human perception. And one of those, inner forms of knowing is that intuition that you just mentioned in your reading from the energy healing information. And that inner knowing is with us all. And it doesn't really come to the fore unless we allow it to. It's not something you can force at all. It's something you allow. And the Sedona method talks about how we can set goals, for instance, in our lives. Say, let's set a goal for becoming really great self-healers and supporting other people in healing themselves. And that was my goal. Do you go out and force yourself and white knuckle it to accomplish that goal? No, you have your stated, intentions, and by that power of intention and focus on that particular goal, you just allow it to happen, and you have much more energy available to actually achieve those tasks without any kind of force whatsoever. So the context is power versus force, spiritual power versus kind of mechanical force that and abuse of technology that these people use. So this is truly the turning over of a new leaf and exposing this really insane system. And I know I think of that movie, the Raiders of the Lost Ark, where they were going after the Nazis, and it was the Nazis basically. It became the CIA. They created NASA, the United States, and they, through Project Paperclip, did those things to Kathy O'Brien. And what they're doing to all of us now is basically the Nazi thing, making our generation as baby boomers safe for that cultural the culture war. The fascist culture war actually is known thus now today as the whole environmental movement. And that was the creation again of Prince Philip, these old crazy oligarchs, and they established their little conclave in the UN. And, they're going to try and pass the COP2 thing or whatever it is and charge everybody a bunch of money for, being carbon units. And it's almost, anything about real science of energy healing and physics, you know how kooky this stuff is. And, I think smart people they try to support others to reason their way out of it, for one, and you can't do that when you're in a state of fear. So you need to listen to Daryl Hamamoto, it's Hamamoto, Hamamoto, I guess. His interviews with Alex Jones and other people are fantastic to basically decode this really sad thing that's happened to the millennials through the universities. And anybody who's smart will recognize that through the internet they can educate themselves on just about anything if they can focus on something besides kind of meaningless entertainment. And I'll tell you, reality is much more interesting than all those fantasy worlds these people create, and it's endlessly entertaining to me that this is all happening right now. I'm just stoked by what we can do, and I focus on that instead of, I can't. They won't let me. That's just ridiculous. Do it. We're already free. Just do it. So this is exciting, Claire. I think we're really truly on this the verge of a new paradigm. And some people, I think, kind of misguided about what that's all about. But it's a whole new renaissance, kind of a creation. And it pays to you can just jump straight to an understanding of what quantum science is. And it started pretty much with Max Planck and Einstein, who said, concerning matter, we've been all wrong. What we have called matter is energy, whose vibration has been so lowered as to perceptible to the senses, to be perceptible to the senses. There is no matter. And isn't that consistent with the map of the scale of human consciousness I just talked about?
Yes, and I wanted to ask you about that. You said something about you just need to relax and let it flow through you, and it will manifest itself. Years ago, before the internet, before I had even studied on this in any entirety, I did study the occult for most of my life. It's and that's not devil worship, guys. I mean, that is just hidden knowledge. And I was in Dallas. My cousin had flown out to visit me, and we were driving down Turtle Creek Boulevard in Dallas, 4-lane highway with a creek running in the middle of it. We came up to a red light. Well, actually, my light was green, and as I pulled into the intersection, I slammed on the brakes. Locked I had a Datsun 2000, little sports car. I locked all four wheels up, and I went sliding into the intersection, and my cousin's looking at me against a green light. My cousin's looking at me like I was insane. And a car ran the red light, passed in front of us by about 2 or 3 feet, and totaled the Volkswagen on the other side of the westbound lanes. Totaled it. And I started up as soon as he got by, took one look at the wreck and kept going. And my cousin said, "How'd you know? You couldn't see. That was Fitzgerald Street there across from Turtle Creek Boulevard, surrounded by mansions, high walls. You couldn't see Fitzgerald Street from where we were. Could not see it." And he said, "How did you know? How did you know?" I said, "Well, just felt like I should stop." But that's the kind of power that we've got here.
Absolutely. Discernment. Spiritual discernment. You know, it's funny because William kind of marveled yesterday at, he says, how does this happen? You know, he opens up a document or something and it's right to where he wanted to be. And this is called synchronicity sometimes, but it's kind of this attraction aversion thing. And if you let go of both the attraction and the aversion forces, this kind of dualistic energetic force, you come to peace. Come to peace and acceptance, and stuff just happens on its own, Clay. It's incredible. And that, you know, those goals and life missions that we want to see happen on their own because we decided to. We made a decision instead of deferring to some idiot so-called expert on our lives. We have made a present tense free will choice to do something different, to learn from our experience, to move forward in history and be actual instruments of history and express, you know, this beauty and genius that we already have in these most miraculous ways. And, you know, these people that want to treat us like animals and, you know, have us groping around on all fours, have us trapped in there's a neat story called the Malaysian monkey trap that has to do with, it was used as a metaphor for being dependent upon the whole financial system and the whole matrix. And it's a system that Malaysians use to catch monkeys, which they eat. and they use a bottle, and they put one of the nuts that the monkeys like in the bottle, excuse me, and the neck of the bottle is such that the monkey can put his hand into the bottle and grasp the nut. But once he's grasped that nut and he's clinging to it, you know, he's holding on. He's in that state of stress because he wants that nut. He can't get his hand out of that bottle. And so that's the trap. It traps itself, and the hunter comes along and checks it and kills the monkey and eats it. So the whole lesson and the moral of the story is let go of the nut. Let go of the money, the desire, and the wants that you have, because you already have those things that you want. Now, here's a real amazing thing in the work of incredible, he's a psychoneuroimmunologist. It's a real pleasant, funny guy, a good sense of humor and everything else. His name's Mario E. Martinez, and he was in Uruguay, and he's actually taught priests what real forgiveness is. And he defines it not as, you know, letting the perpetrators off the hook, but as freeing yourself from self-entrapment. It's letting go of self-entrapment because we're clinging to that guilt. You know, in Catholic culture, you know, this whole idea of suffering is some kind of a sacrament that these people have created. And the synthesis on the opposite side of this is a way of letting go of all of that guilt and shame and betrayal that Mario Martinez has discovered. There, in all cultures, there are three archetypal emotional wounds, and it's shame, betrayal, and abandonment. And abandonment is probably the worst. But when it comes to human wants and desires, the ultimate thing is we want control. We want control, we want acceptance, and we want to be separate from God, basically. But control, acceptance, and security. So these wants can be released, and we're already secure as we're going to ever be. I mean, we're all going to die, right? Our bodies are going to be transformed into spirit. And kind of in a Buddhist sense, we become little drops over a waterfall when we manifest as individuals. And then when we go into death, we join that body of water, so to speak, and become one again with the Father, as Jesus said. And I just wish Christians could, you know, get out of the dogma and, you know, seize this opportunity to let go of all of these kind of ridiculous, you know, Christian Zionist constructs and stop being the bleeding heart sacrificial lambs. You know, it's an ego trip more than anything else. And just kind of used to say, get off the cross, we need the wood. You know, let's combine our faith with action. As the Bible said, faith without works is dead, and allow ourselves to heal and actually, you know, actualize the teachings of Jesus instead of just sort of preaching it. And there's a lot of preaching going on here without anything really being accomplished, because they're all under this universal church plan, and it's institutional normative rationale. It's like being in jail and having to adapt to those very limited circumstances and doing really stupid things because, like you said, people get bored and then they have a fight or something to release all that trapped energy. Does that make sense?
Yeah. You know, part of the problem with your Christian churches, most of them have a Masonic cornerstone in the building.
Right.
And the other thing is, you know, I frankly don't know that the God of the Old Testament was God at all. Certainly not the God of Jesus, not the connection that the New Testament taught. So we've got that Pharisaic Zionist control over our churches. Over, you know, you got What was the guy's name that rewrote the Bible for the Jews? Schofield.
Oh, no, Schofield?
Schofield, yeah. So, how long have you been deceived, folks? And Jesus warned you about it. Jesus told you that they were going to try to do this to you, that they were going to use his name, the false prophets. I mean, we do have something to learn from the Bible, and we can learn from it without being controlled by it, without being subverted by it, without being misled. We've got freedom of choice. And we can take the teachings of Jesus, and frankly, I've always been really fond of Thomas Jefferson, because he took all of the words of Paul and took everything out of the Thomas Jefferson Bible, but the words of Jesus. And if you're going to be a Christian, folks, why not follow the words of Jesus? Obviously, the Pharisees didn't like him, didn't want him telling you that you can do what I do and more. Didn't want you to be set free. And the cage you're in, you've helped create, folks. You can really break those chains. One of the ways is the way that she's been talking about here.
Well, Jefferson didn't think much of priests. I think a lot of us have heard this quote where it says, I have sworn upon the altar of God eternal hostility against every form of tyranny over the mind of man. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. And but that's called a contextomy, where that quote kind of was surgically taken out of context, because he was talking about priests. Can I read the whole quote? It's not very long. It says,
go ahead.
In every country and in every age, the priest has been hostile to liberty. He is always in alliance with the despot, abetting his abuses in return for protection to his own. It is easier to acquire wealth and power by this combination than by deserving them, and to effect this, they have perverted the pious religion ever preached to man into mystery and jargon, unintelligible to all mankind, and therefore the safer engine for their purposes. History, I believe, furnishes no example of a priest-ridden people maintaining a free civil government. This marks the lowest grade of ignorance, of which their civil as well as religious leaders will always avail themselves for their own purposes. And then it says, I have sworn upon the altar of God eternal hostility against every form of tyranny over the mind of man. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. So I want to throw something in here for all of us true patriots. And it's this resistance and rebellion against some, perceived enemy that has us stuck as well. I think we just need to cut them loose, frankly. We need to let them go and stop focusing on what assholes they are, and literally seize the day and start creating beautiful and good and genius in all of us, healing ourselves and supporting others in doing that. And Maya Martinez, in his book, The Mind-Body Code, which involves our cultural beliefs and how they create immune reactions in the bodies when they're destructive, has suggested we create these wellness subcultures in our area, and we get together face-to-face with people, put down the iPod, and start talking to each other in front of the fire. And that's a beautiful kind of indigenous sacred space that we can create and truly undo all of this perceived conflict. We know the whole thing is controlled conflict. And William's an expert on that. Anyone who reads his work says, oh my God, why do I want to go there? let's focus on something really yummy and healthy and comfortable. And but unfortunately, people get addicted to crisis. So there's kind of a level of happiness that people can tolerate. And one of the things that Mario Martinez's works reveal is that we need to know how to navigate that chaos, that interface of knowledge and ignorance in our relationships with the rest of the world. And so he does some fantastic guided imagery that also helped me tremendously. And so it's very important we find a safe space, even if it's just in a comfortable chair with our back to the wall, and it's quiet, and maybe we have our feet stuck barefooted on the ground so that we can resonate with that human resonance. And that turns out to be anti-inflammatory too. So we're actually cooling our jets, so to speak, and calming down. And if we allow it, our bodies will go back into natural homeostasis, which is the way animals deal with trauma. They get a threat in nature, a predator of some kind, and my chickens freak out when they see, a hawk or something, and run for cover. And so if we release that immediately, shake it off, sweating and different forms of release right away upon the experience, then it doesn't get trapped in the body. And so PTSD is created really by suppressing those emotions in ourselves and basically tolerating and staying around abusive people, the control freaks of the world. And, we will die before we might admit that we were wrong about something because we want control. We want the sense of being right and making somebody else's wrong. And does it really matter? That kind of stuff is just a bunch of opinions, and none are really true. So, there's a bad joke about that, a crude joke that says opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one, and they all stink. And it's true. It's silly. And if we can dismiss all of this nonsense with the humor and which also heals, then we got it made. It's game over for Brzezinski and his ridiculous world chessboard. I mean, come on, our strategy should be the art of war. Don't engage in the first place. Go do something fun and good and healing, and make these guys obsolete.
I agree with that, and I'm going to close the show out with a thought for you. A few years back, I had just gotten out of prison. I went over to my sister's house, and she said, "Son, would you like to meet my preacher?" And I said, "Well, you've known me your whole life. You might know what's best." And so she introduced me to the preacher and disappeared. And this is a story I want to share with William and Art. He said, have you been saved, son? I said, "Well, I don't know, preacher. What's that mean?" "Well, have you accepted Jesus as your Lord and Master?" And I said, "Well, frankly, I don't have a Lord and Master. I haven't met Jesus. I hadn't seen anybody's ID. No." "Well," I said, "let me ask you a question, preacher. There's an Aborigine in Australia that took a mate, had 2 children, taught them how to find water, told them how to hunt, told them how to live. He was a good man. He's never seen an Englishman. He's never seen a white man. He's never read the Bible. He dies. Does he go to hell?" Well, yes. And I reached out and grabbed him by his tie, took him to the front door, and threw him out of the house. And my sister came into the room right after that. Said, where's the preacher?" I said, "Oh, he had to leave." She's to this day, she still doesn't talk to me much, but It's the way I feel about it, and that's why I enjoy having Art and William to talk about the indigenous Americans here. And I identify more with that than I do the Pharisee preachers trained by the Catholic Church or the Jesuits. And that's why I'm a free American.
So I'd like to encourage everyone to find another Jefferson quote, and it starts with this: "The eyes of the virtuous all over the earth are turned with anxiety on us as the only depositaries of the sacred fire of liberty. I hope and firmly believe that the whole world will, sooner or later, feel the benefit from the issue of our assertion of the rights of man. May the Declaration of Independence be to the world what I believe it will be to some parts sooner and others later, but finally to all, the signal of arousing men to burst the chains under which monkish ignorance," and he's talking about priests and stuff, "and superstition have persuaded them to bind themselves, and to assume the blessings and security of self-government. Cherish every measure which may foster our brotherly union and perpetuate a constitution of government destined to be the primitive and precious model of what is to change the condition of man over the globe."
All right.
That's righteous.
Thank you very much, Ronnie Blair. I really enjoyed the show today. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
You as well. Much to be grateful for.
Thank you very much.